put some mask spreading in and put my mask on, and now my eyes are watering, cause, I'm sorry. Getting it together. Right.
And then if you pass the mic back and forth as we change speakers, and we'll just have everybody hold the microphone by the hand if you can.
Very good. Thank you so much. But more importantly, I would say thank you all so much for being here with us this afternoon, you know, as we talk about just the work that we've been doing over the past 2 years as it relates to affordable housing in the city of New Orleans. And so housing affordability has not started with me as being mayor. It's something that I've been really focused on from a community leader to being on the New Orleans City Council, bringing the housing committee back to the City Council, and of course as mayor since May of 2018, hitting the ground running with affordable housing being a priority. Not just one for me, but absolutely a priority for the citizens of our city. The residents have made that very clear through the years. And also understanding really how not only is it an affordable housing crisis going on now and even nationally, but even understanding where our city has had some real issues with affordability pre-Katrina, but absolutely in the post-Katrina environment. So we can no way forget about that. But recognizing that COVID-19, this pandemic, has only made matters worse here for the city of New Orleans. But in spite of the challenges with COVID, we've been able to demonstrate real results on the ground. And this is what we're here to talk about with you all this afternoon. We have put forth over 20 million, I tell you, in affordable housing in the city since less really than 2 years' time. We have about 7 million more that's going to developments happening. And we're making sure that our priorities around affordable housing are focused on various areas. One, our special needs community, being very intentional about supporting housing developments, housing efforts as it relates to our special needs households. Also, making sure that we extend affordability in terms of the projects that may have been built with public money. One, when we were coming in, and I think right before you may have recalled the issue with American Can, one good example of how the covenants, they had met their covenants, the time had lapsed, but then here what we want to do is continue to provide the resources necessary so that affordable housing can remain intact for our people. That was just one example of how it can become a problem if there's not a plan in place to ensure that these units can remain affordable for our residents. Also, projects that appropriately leverage the city's money. You know, making sure that, hey, money is at the table, but we're leveraging it appropriately to bring properties not only back into commerce, but to create new affordable housing. Also, as it relates to projects that we call that are shovel ready, meaning, you know, they have site control, they have the financing in place, and here's the city able to leverage again its public dollar to make sure that that project happens and is delivered on time, and of course, you know, with the level of quality that we're after. Also, projects going back to it that provide permanent affordability, because we know that we have residents in our city that you gotta meet people where they are, and there are people who need permanent affordable housing in our city. Right now we have 652 units under construction and about 846 units in pre-development, which is a big deal. Also, I want to say in regards to priorities, it's also with the focus of keeping people in their homes. So we have residents who own their homes. You know, they may need a little love, meaning just to fix it up. They may see improvements happening around them, which of course increases the property value. But how we have restructured our owner rehab housing program is through the lens of, again, wanting to help those homeowners stay in their homes, not feeling the pressure of being pushed out, but they're able to maintain, do the improvements necessary to be on par with the improvements that they're seeing around them. It's very important to keep people in their neighborhoods, which, as we talk about, not just neighborhoods redeveloping, but also seeing some neighborhoods gentrified. But this is a key component. Also lifting up programs or even legislation, I will say. As a council member, I passed the Mow to Own program. And at that time, the administration did not promulgate rules for it to be implemented. Well, now I'm on this side, on the executive side, and we are working through law to promulgate the rules necessary so that the Mow to Own program can be activated. This was another strategy. You know, you need multiple tools in the toolbox to deal with affordable housing. And so we saw the issue with Mow to Own is really aligned with these overgrown, vacant lots that I consider blight in neighborhoods throughout the city. And so if we implement the Mow to Own, it could be utilized as a tool to where that adjacent homeowner or resident could mow that lawn. The sweat equity and the resources that they put into maintaining that lawn, greening and cleaning, would pave the way for that adjacent homeowner to therefore acquire that property. That can do a couple of things. One, of course, bring that parcel back into commerce, clean it up, keep it nice and clean, but also allow that adjacent homeowner to build more wealth in the community in which they live. And we know in the aftermath of Katrina, you know, our folks in our city, you know, families live around one another. And we also know that that was definitely impacted in the post-Katrina environment. But there are needs for family members who really want to come on back and live by mama, live by the auntie, and live by their uncle. And so implementing the Mow to Own is with that vision in mind. Again, bringing properties back into commerce, which means putting them back on the tax rolls, and therefore using those dollars to move more housing, and of course, better city services that can come out of that. Also, I wanted to mention other projects and focuses that we have or initiatives on affordable housing. Of course, you can't do this alone. So it means working with our partners on the ground locally, as well as the state government and of course the federal government. No doubt about it, working with HUD. This is what we definitely are doing. Also putting blighted properties back into commerce. We've learned, again, in this post-Katrina environment, that code enforcement liens do not automatically put that property back into commerce, therefore, again, back on the tax rolls. So being creative in our approach with blight. Inclusionary zoning, we were able to get that passed through the city council, and that work began actually when I was on the New Orleans City Council and overseeing Community Development Committee for the council. So again, moving things along. Emergency housing programs continue to be a priority for the city, not just because we're in the midst of COVID and have to address very swiftly our homeless population living on the street, but emergency housing programs continue to be a priority. You'll hear more about that. You'll also hear more about assistance on rental assistance. And even as it relates to evictions and the work that we're doing on that, not just looking at the tenant side, which is very important, but we also have to look at the ownership side, that landlord. We need to keep that landlord being able to own that property and of course provide affordable housing to their tenants. And our landlords are not big time. They're small time landlords, not in it to get rich, but really in it to provide some supplemental income as well as quality housing. I also have to just mention this. Slumlords. It's just another issue that when we talk about housing, that is on our radar. We know, particularly in that post-Katrina kind of environment, the city kind of stopped even enforcing properties that were occupied. Well, we've moved full steam ahead in that regard, and it's working, but we have to be consistent in that effort. But it is on our radar, it is a priority, because again, people who are providing housing to our folks, it has to be quality. And so we will continue to enforce. Housing for our homeless population, I did mention that. We'll talk more about that. And you'll also just learn more about just other initiatives that we have going on. So without further ado, and I know I've been long-winded, I can talk all day about affordable housing because the work, you can't make it up. So in order to not make it up, I'm going to turn it over to my fierce leader, Ellen Lee, to move the conversation forward. So thank you, Ellen. And let me move this over.
All right, thanks. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. I always say it's so very hard to follow the mayor when we're talking about affordable housing because she knows so much about this topic. She really doesn't need us here to provide context and information, but I'll take it from there, ma'am, and add a little bit more. I want to say a couple of things. The mayor talked about partnerships and the fact that we can't do this alone, and she is absolutely spot on about that. We rely so heavily on our partnerships, particularly our public sector partners, to be right there in the game with us. When I talk about them locally, I mean specifically our Community Development Office at the city, our Finance Authority of New Orleans, which is now, I think, maybe being called Finance New Orleans, so they're doing a little bit of rebranding at Finance New Orleans, our Redevelopment Authority, NORA, New Orleans Redevelopment Authority, and then our Housing Authority, so HANO. These, what I've been calling the big four of affordable housing development in New Orleans, we really are being so much more intentional about working together to leverage each other's resources, because it takes sometimes all of our resources to come together to support affordable housing development. It may take a parcel of land that NORA owns. It may take subsidy from OCD. It may take a bond financing from the Finance Authority, and it may take vouchers from HANO, all to get a tenant into an affordable housing apartment. So these are the ways that we must come together and work together. It also means that while we're leaning on each other, we have to make sure that we're building each other's capacity and building the capacity of each other. And we've been undertaking some initiatives really through some philanthropic resources, some generous support from the Ford Foundation, because we're going after that philanthropy money as well to help support our efforts, to really help us build capacity and strengthen all of those four areas. So looking at our organizations to see what are the new tools that we can put in the toolbox. Are there tools that got a little rusty? Because they're available, but we haven't used them in a while. And so Finance Authority, for example, this was a partnership also with the state, having our Finance Authority now available or able to issue mortgage revenue bonds to support the development of affordable housing, to be able to issue pilots or payments in lieu of taxes as a financing option to make deals work. These are components that the Finance Authority has had in their toolkit, and they've had regulatory ability to do it, but they just haven't been used in a while. We're working with our Redevelopment Authority to bring a little known tool called a priority bid, so that when these properties that are blighted and have gone through a code enforcement process, when they get to a sheriff's sale, instead of, anybody being able to buy them, and then we don't know what the outcome will be of somebody buying them, our Redevelopment Authority can step in with what's called a priority bid and have really right of first refusal. So that means we know then that NORA can gather those properties, and then we can control the destiny of those properties, making them available for developers who are going to develop the affordable housing and businesses that we need in our neighborhood. So this is some of the work of activating tools that are in the toolkit that is strengthening this ecosystem that we have around affordable housing. The mayor mentioned mandatory inclusionary zoning as a tool to help develop more affordability. we know that we have these blighted properties that we're looking not only to see how we put these properties in the code enforcement pipeline back into commerce, but you know, the city owns some property also. So the city owns property that's maybe not being put to its highest and best use. And so we're working to identify what those properties are and to make those available for affordable housing and commercial, you know, development also. And I talk about commercial because, you know, we talk about units produced and units in the pipeline, but that's how we do it to count things. But we know that people don't live in units, they live in apartments and they live in homes and they live in neighborhoods. And so this work is really about creating neighborhoods for people that have quality, safe housing, and in neighborhoods that are close to amenities, close to businesses and jobs and parks and bike trails and infrastructure. And so we also take a look at how we're making our investments in housing and where we're prioritizing those neighborhoods and the developers who are saying that they can develop of housing in the neighborhoods where we know we need it. And then we're doing a little bit of flipping the script where we're going to be identifying neighborhoods and parcels of land where we can develop housing and tell developers, we have land and we have money and we need you to tell us how you're going to develop the housing that we think we need in the neighborhoods where we need it. You know, developers have stepped up and they have great projects and we're happy to support good projects, but we know that we're missing out also on some investment in neighborhoods that are critical. And we're going to flip the script a little bit and bring some of the resources to the table and ask developers to tell us what they're going to do with those properties and the funding that we have available. So, and I just can't say that we have a bigger champion than the mayor. Advocacy is, you know, another tool in the toolkit, and advocacy at the state level and at the federal level for more funding for affordable housing and getting our fair share of what we need to really serve our people better is something that can't be underestimated, that advocacy and that caring for people and the housing that they deserve as a basic human right.
Absolutely. And just to add before I turn it over to Margiana, who will get more into the weeds about the initiatives that we have going on and the outcomes that we have achieved. A couple of things. One, which was a priority for the administration, was to complete a property inventory, and that has successfully been completed. It specifies properties that the city of New Orleans owns, as well as properties that are commercially owned or privately owned. But when we got here, we really didn't have an inventory of the city knowing exactly its property and to hold itself accountable for the properties that we do own, those that may be blighted, that we can activate putting them back into commerce, use them as pilots and the like. So that's been completed. Also, as it relates to the public, and Ellen mentioned advocacy, you know, the biggest advocates that truly demonstrated this were the residents of the city of New Orleans. We came to, you know, the people last year asking them to support the city in selling $500 million in bonds. And we, for the first time, built in affordable housing into the formula. And, you know, this shows that the people of this city know that affordable housing is a priority, and it's a priority for them. So we have to say thank you for that. That was unprecedented work. But Ms. Margiana, I'm gonna turn it over to you to give us more details.
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor. And I thank you all for this opportunity to talk about some of the work that's going on at the Office of Community, the Mayor's Office of Community Development. We couldn't ask for a better champion, a better advocate. The mayor's right there in the weeds on it. She knows everything that's going on, and she gets regular reports. She wants to be in it. She's very involved. But no, I really appreciate this. So I did also prepare a PowerPoint just to go through that as well, to talk about, because my point that I'm here to make is to go into some of the detail. The mayor talked about priorities, the city's priorities, and I'm here to tell you how we're reaching those priorities. And the first one, we talked about housing stabilization, and that's really important right now because in the COVID, post-COVID environment, we're seeing that there are a lot of people that are in danger. They're on the edge. Many of our tenants, even homeowners, were already on the edge before the pandemic. We know that. It's been an affordable housing crisis, so that means that we have to work even harder. The pandemic did not stop any work at the Office of Community Development. We've only worked harder. We never stopped working. Many of us never stopped coming to the building, but we did separate ourselves, but the work never stopped. And so we have to make sure that people are stabilized. And we're stabilizing households through our rental assistance program. We were one of the first programs in the city. And I'm not, when I say this, I'm talking about the office. I'm talking about the mayor that has allowed us to pivot and make these changes. Some of them, no other jurisdiction had these type of programs. So the mayor was receptive and open to us putting forth our program. So the rental assistance program, the very first one, was one of the first programs. We've had many other jurisdictions in the state to ask us, hey, send us your documents, send us your program documents and your applications because we'd like to duplicate. We don't have a problem with that. But that program started in April, right after the pandemic. We received over 8,000 applications, and we went through all those applications. Those funds were exhausted, but then we came back in June and we started another rental assistance program, which was our imminent danger rental assistance program. And that program kind of tightened the net a little bit. The purpose of that program was to catch those people that may fall out even though there's moratoriums in place. Sometimes the moratoriums does not help everybody. And those are people who may not have a lease, or for whatever reason, they find themselves facing eviction. So we started that program, and that program's been working very well, and it's been very successful. Also, the state has made available several $1 million, but $5.6 million is supposed to come to New Orleans, and that program stalled. They reached out to the Office of Community Development, the city, with the mayor's support to assist that program in moving along. Of course, we want to help. We're talking about citizens of New Orleans facing eviction or losing their housing. So we're helping with that program as well, and we're excited to do that. Our homelessness prevention, you know that right now the city has moved many of our homeless individuals that were unsheltered into hotels. I'm happy to announce that most of those individuals have been placed in permanent housing, which is huge. That's huge. These are people who weren't sheltered at all, and some of them, I was a part of that in the mayor as well, and it was exciting to see because there were some people that just need a little bit of assistance. They work every day, some of them work 2 and 3 jobs, but they just don't have enough to pay their rent. But there are others who need that supportive services, and the mayor's always been very big on that. Look, make sure supportive services is involved. And so what we've been doing is we're reforging relationships. Ellen talked about some tools that we're using that are already in the tool shed, and also part of that is relationships that were already there, but they're a little rusty, not communicating right. They don't hear us, we don't hear them. We're trying to reforge those relationships, make them better and make them work. And so like the Continuum of Care, Unity, and Fano, not saying that we didn't have good relationships with them, but you know what? They're the money people. They're good at underwriting. That's an expertise that does not occur overnight. So we're working with them for them to help us underwrite our projects that we get requests for funding for. So that way we make sure we don't over-subsidize, and we make sure that's what that project is supposed to get. Accountability, we're right there with accountability. We're making sure developers do what they say they're going to do, and we're doing that through our staff. We're doing that through our compliance department and our construction department. They go out to these developments and they make sure what they're putting up is what they said they were gonna do. Once they lease up, they lease to units to the people they said they would serve, and they make sure it maintains and stays that way throughout the affordability period. And I won't go through all of these, but I just wanted to list some of them. I know Ellen touched on them, the mayor touched on them, but successful homeownership, that's something that we've done different. Previously, it was $35,000 for down payment assistance, which has been a very successful program. And with the increase in taxes, inflation, we moved that up to $45,000. Because not only do we want to see people become homeowners, we want them to be successful homeowners. We want them to be able to enjoy homeownership and benefit from homeownership. We're not just about putting you in a house and see you later. We want to put you in the right house for you, make you happy and successful. That's just one of the changes that we're doing. And unfortunately, in the housing affordability arena, it's a lot of changes and work that goes on, but you may not see it sometimes for years. There's a lot that's going on. From day one, when the mayor came in, from day one, well, actually, when I interviewed with her and her team, they made it very clear to me their expectations. But from day one, the mayor made it very clear what her expectations were, and that this is a crisis. There's no time to play, and I need to see deliverables, progress. And so we've always been working. We've always been on the cutting edge. We've always been not trying to replicate, but come out with what's best for New Orleans, because New Orleans is special. It's different, and it's not like we could just go and Google up another city and take a plan or a program and say that'll work here. No, it's different here. It is special, and its uniqueness sometimes is what makes it so challenging, but we're up for the challenge. So we're working hard every day to bring affordable housing to the people of New Orleans. And extended affordability. A lot of our developments, we have some that have permanent affordability. We're not afraid of complex deals. If we don't know, we bring in other people. We bring in Fano. We have the new executive director at Hano, Nora, and we've also forged a much better relationship with the Louisiana Housing Corporation. So when we get these deals, we have some deals right now in the pipeline that are a combination of new construction. In fact, I was talking to a developer last week, and she's like, yeah, I got a new deal I'm thinking about. And I said, well, what is it? Is it historic rehab? Oh, no, Marjorie, we don't do anything plain. It's got to be complicated. So it's new construction, rehab, historic rehab, redevelopment. It's a lot going on there, but we're not afraid of it because we know it's going to be helpful to the city of New Orleans, and we will figure out how to make it work. And so we're having to pivot. We're having to keep an open mind. We're having to be progressive, lean in, and just stay positive and focused about it. And I'd like to also, some of these I want to touch on because they're just so big for the mayor. Inclusivity. You hear the mayor talks about this all the time. There should be affordable housing in every neighborhood. A person should be able to live where they want to live. There should be some place where that's available to them. I personally don't believe there's any such thing as a bad neighborhood or a good neighborhood. But we do know is we have to pull the resources together. So if we have people moving out of one neighborhood, we have to go and invest in that neighborhood. We don't want to divest everything out of a neighborhood and leave it where it's blighted and emptied and a problem. We will also go in the economic side and figure out what we can do to bring investment to that neighborhood. So that neighborhood, some people may not want to move out of the neighborhood. So that neighborhood can have parks and walkways and restaurants and stores. So we're taking a holistic approach, not a narrow approach, but making sure that there's affordable housing that's available to everyone. And I'm just gonna go on to the next slide because I too can talk about this for a very long period of time, but I won't do that. Preservation, that's super important as well. And that's all a part of making sure we use our resources properly, whether it's for our small landlords, existing large developments, making sure the funding is available when they need to recapitalize, when they need to do rehab work. We have one development right now that's it's getting funding from the Louisiana Housing Corporation. We've talked to them a lot, Peace Lake Towers. And also I had a conversation with Fano about that this morning. We want that project to move forward so those people can be better serviced and those units substantially rehabbed. So we're really working real hard to get that one done. The next chart, and I apologize if it's difficult to see, but it just talks about some of the funding that we're using, how we're using it. It's just, these are the resources that are in play. The mayor talked about our $20 million that we put into the NOFA. The last two NOFAs, we have one NOFA that's out right now. The deadline is at the end of the month. It's $7 million. We had a pre-application call, about 64 developers, so we expect to have a good turnout for that one again. And the exciting thing about that is the last NOFA we had, we awarded $10 million, but we had a wait list. It was very well subscribed. We had 24 applications. We awarded 10, but the wonderful thing about it is the general obligation bond proceeds sales. Those sales are gonna go to funding waitlist projects, so that's gonna give us another 10 more projects. And those projects are positioning themselves to move forward very quickly. We've been in talks with all of those developers as well. So even if we get past the $7 million, which I totally expect we will, there may be other opportunities. We're always looking for other avenues, other ways to generate funding, other funding to bring to the city of New Orleans. Sometimes it's not as you expect. One of our developments, St. Peter's, and it's in the slides, that's one of the special projects, it's a veterans project, and that developer just received an award of $1 million. That's $1 million coming to the city of New Orleans that's gonna help those tenants. So, and it's for training and developing it from home ownership and various things. But my point is there are many ways to bring funding, and we're looking at all of them. One thing that we're doing on there, we talked about local issuance of multifamily revenue bonds with FANO. That was huge because there are millions, I want to say over $100 million in multifamily revenue bonds, believe it or not, that go unused every year. And the LHC knew it was an issue, but we talked about that with the mayor and her chief of staff, and they acknowledged that issue, and they were willing to give FANO the opportunity to use those. But the good thing is you still get to use those with 4% tax credits. Before, if you wanted LHC's 4% tax credits, you had to get those bonds from them. So now we're able to do that locally. We have local control.
That's huge.
Yeah, that is huge. And so that's a whole nother opportunity for funding that was not even on the table. So we're really excited about it. Our owner-occupied rehab, that is the one and only program that was kind of put on ice a little bit because of COVID, and that was only for the safety of those elderly homeowners or, people coming inside someone's home. But we are ready to start up, so, we're really excited about that program. We get calls. We're ready to get that program going, but our down payment assistance program has been going wonderful, and then also our developments, just our developments, the ones that we have in the pipeline, they never stop moving forward. And I see that. I see a difference in the developers. They are coming to the table. They are being accountable. They know the mayor is serious about the funding, that she's committed, and she expects for them to do what they said they're going to do. And we see them doing more. We see the relationships outside with the state stakeholders much better. So now with the 9% tax credits that are coming up, that funding round that's the applications are due in a couple weeks, we have about 10 developers that are applying in that round. Before this year, they had all but given up. They were getting maybe 1 or 2 applications from New Orleans because they were not awarded 9% credits to New Orleans for 3 years. So it's expensive to apply. So a lot of developers just weren't even applying. But because of some of the changes, what they're seeing, they're willing to take a chance, and we're so excited about it because we want to bring 9% tax credits back to New Orleans. And another thing I'll just touch on as far as our state partners, the State Office of Community Development, they also came in to assist. They looked at our pipeline and the projects, and they said, you know what, these are good projects. We'll stand behind these projects. You can take some of those funds that you had planned to award to those projects and use it for COVID response, and we will provide disaster CDBG funds for those projects. So that was huge. All these changes, all these movements, relationships are nothing but helpful to the city of New Orleans. And it just shows that under the mayor's leadership, what our stakeholders, how they're responding to her leadership. And this is, and I apologize, I know it's a little small, but this is our pipeline. The next 2 pages is our pipeline of projects. We have 24 projects in the pipeline. So these are projects that are either under construction or that will be under construction between now and the next 6 to 9 months. That's huge. That's a bit, I'm very proud of that pipeline. So it's 2 pages. You'll see they're all over New Orleans, and they're in various stages of construction. We have small developers, we have large developers. We're working on ways to build our capacity with our small, emerging, new developers, because I believe those are the developers that are going to come in and they're going to help us with infill development and blight reduction. Those will be the developers that will say, you know what, I'll take that 1 or 2 lots from Nora and I'll develop it. It's not too small for me, and then I'll come back and get 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 more. So we think all of our developers are important. The small ones, the local ones, the big ones, we want them all because it's affordable housing. The demand, the need for affordable housing is so great that we're looking to build capacity on all levels. And these are just some pictures, and this is a Winn-Dixie development. That project is in the CNI footprint, and it's under construction, moving along very well, very fast. So we're really excited about that one. I just wanted to share a few pictures. This is the Lake Forest Manor, is a senior facility over in New Orleans East. That project is also coming along well. It was damaged during Katrina and had been vacant all that time, so now it's up and going, and so we're really excited about that one. And this is St. Anne Square. This project is a combination of duplexes, multifamily. In fact, this was one of the very first projects. This is a perfect example. This is one of the very first projects from the first NOPA round that we awarded funds to, and so now it's close to finished. They're just waiting on their occupancy, certificates of occupancy, but it's finished, so it's duplexes, it's historic, it's new construction as you can see here, but it's super exciting, and that's right in the middle of the city. Mm-hmm. And this is, and I have my disclaimer up here, this is a pre-COVID gathering, but this is, this is McDonough, and this actually happened like a day or 2 before the whole COVID disaster thing. So this was a huge reception. Everybody in the lower 9th Ward is very excited about this development. It has a historical component to it. It's a redevelopment of the McDonough 19th School. It's going to have a civil rights institute part of it, but also some housing. So a lot of people, we got a lot of responses saying, hey, I went to school there, you know, or different things. So we're really excited about that one. Look, there are lots of houses, lots of developments we have going on right now. I could keep talking about it. We have the reveal over on Michoud, and that's the Nassau, near the Nassau site. That's going to be super exciting because it's going to have for entrepreneur training and development, supportive services for people that would like to be entrepreneurs, but also home ownership development courses. This is the project I spoke about earlier, is St. Peter's, which is a veterans housing development right in the middle of Mid-City. They're looking to do phase 2 of that, which they're putting an application into LAC for phase 2. And what makes this one special is that it has a net zero, so the tenants will not have an energy bill. So that's super exciting because we have to look at ways we could cut costs all different kind of ways. So it may not be a voucher, but this is just as good because they, will not have electricity bills. And we want to be able to understand that technology, green technology, resiliency. We want to be able to duplicate it, but it has to be reasonable in terms of cost, for developmental costs. That's just it. I just put a few, but like I said, there are a lot of exciting ones, and we expect to see even more We have the Iris Hannah Scattered Site Facility. It's a scattered site in the Lower Garden District and off of Carrollton. That's gonna be exciting too. So lots of good projects. And I just wanted to share, this is just a few pictures of our down payment assistance. We've helped over 200 people. But I wanted to share the pictures, because if you just look at some of the faces, and I love this one, because this lady, even though she has a mask on, you can tell she's so proud and excited and smiling. I just love these pictures, because it just goes to show that our work or lack thereof makes a difference, like immediately. When we do our job, it shows. And I'm really excited about these people having a homeownership opportunity. And one last picture. This is our homelessness efforts that we work with the state and the continuum of care. And these are actual people, not stock photos. These are people who were unsheltered homeless that are now in permanent housing. There are more people. Over 200 have been placed in permanent housing. But it's just an example of some of the work we're doing. A lot of work, and it's a great team there at Office of Community Development. I don't do it alone. Tyra is here, is also my director, but there are a lot of good people, and I just couldn't go without saying the staff there that are just amazing, because they have been also during this whole pandemic coming in, making sure that the work is done, and I'm just so proud to be a part of it. So thank you so much, ma'am. And I'm sorry.
Thank you. Oh, no. Thank you very much. You can't make it up when it's real, it is real. I did want to just add that, now Margiana mentioned that our approach is holistic. We understand that transportation factors into affordability as well. We understand that economic development, like tipping, I love the tipping sensation of being very intentional about not just the housing stock, but how do we also deal with the commercial and economic development opportunities as well. Now, I see Laura, I know you're here, transportation, my transportation director. Anything you want to add in regards to transportation, affordability, tied to housing? You're welcome. Come on over.
So, what I would say, I'm just gonna stand up here.
Okay.
I don't wanna get
We
the
need
mic.
you.
No, you have to get this mic.
And before-
Stand back there.
Before you get started, say and spell your name for us.
Laura, Laura,
You have a last name?
Bryant, Bryan.
Perfect.
You can take your message.
She's like, share.
So what I would say is that the mayor has always been very intentional and clear that transportation is the second highest household cost. And as much affordable housing as you build, people still have to get to work, they still have to get to the places that they're going to. And we've been working very closely with Ellen and her team to develop real tools for people. I mean, one of the first things that the mayor was really focused on is transit specifically. So how do we improve transit and connect people where they need to go? There was a restructuring done at the RTA that's been really effective, and we're undergoing a whole new planning effort right now called the New Links Project to directly link people to the places that they need to go and to focus on our neighborhoods where we believe there is affordability. So linking to places where there is affordable housing available, and then creating new housing along these transit corridors. So the other study I'd like to mention is the transit-oriented communities study that is being done in partnership with the RTA and the CPC, the City Planning Commission, and that's going to really give us a framework for how we can improve these communities, how we can infill more affordability, and really link people to the places they need to go. So I just say that the approach is holistic. You know, we work with these people all the time to help improve upon the work that they're already doing, and the mayor has been so clear about making sure that these different agencies are talking, and so I think transportation is a piece of that, as is a huge major component in economic development. I think Jeff had to jump out, but that's all I'd like to say.
Thank you very much. I'm excited about the new links as well. I know there's a second round of public input going on with that, but it's pretty innovative. When we think about New Orleans East, getting our people to and from the rapid transit opportunities, and even some of the routes that are being recommended to go away, but only to increase other areas in terms of accessibility. And it's all been driven really by the public, by the users, and which is essential. So with that, we're going to open it up, I would say, to questions for us to answer if that's okay. And we'll do that.
Can we stay on to Channel 4 first?
What is the big challenge when it comes to this affordable housing? Obviously, there's so many, but is there one that really stands out to you as being the one that you really have to overcome in the near future here?
Well, the biggest challenge has always been the resources that are available and that are flexible, so that you can align them with the right program to get the results that you're after. That's one of the reasons why, we did the affordable housing tour last year, leading up and encouraging people to the $500 million in bond sales, and really getting the community to buy into the fact that we do need to allocate other funding sources, because this isn't going to come directly from the federal government. We're only going to get so much from the federal government, from the state. So trying to be creative in how we can do that. And so with the $150 million invested, I mean, this is a big deal when I think about how we have restructured even the millage renewal that will be coming to the public December. It's up for renewal. We did not, we can't dictate the timeline, unfortunately, but it is coming. But the way that we've structured it would provide $150 million to affordable housing for over 20 years. And so we're going to be proposing this to the public. That's also tied to economic development. That's also tied to early childhood education, and of course our libraries. But what this means is that our public understands the priority. Hopefully they will support this measure December 9th, which will be one presented that will give a tax reduction, but at the same time infusing dollars into this area. So it goes back, I would say, to the dollar, to the resources. That's why we were big pushing for the census. Census automatically indicates how much we'll get from the federal government. And with the response rate in our city being at 58%, that's huge. And we were at 43% in 2010, because our people were all still everywhere after Katrina. So I've always said our last real census was 2000, where we responded 61%. So again, at 58%, it really demonstrates progress. Anything to add in regards to just as he was asking us, some of the biggest challenge? We can take that thing out of here. The Lord taught us that.
Madam Mayor, you're absolutely correct, and I agree that resources is the biggest challenge. And that's why we're looking at other forms of resources, other ways to bring costs down, other ways to work across city and state lines, and also to lobby the federal government for assistance as needed.
Thank you.
Advocate?
Some time ago, probably about 5 years ago, Housing NOLA came together with a report that suggested that the city needed a certain number of opportunities by 2025. And I was just wondering if, in you guys' perspective, if that number has shifted, and if so, sort of what's the ballpark that y'all are working towards, or if you're even thinking about this working that way anymore.
So one thing I will say is that the city is looking to develop policy and benchmarks that are data-driven. So we're in the process of having a plan commission that will look at the needs throughout the city. We have some ideas of what we think the need is, but we need to look at what's in the pipeline, what's been developed, what changes have occurred, even post-pandemic changes. There are some changes in the marketplace that will affect affordable housing, the number of affordable housing units, the amount of funding that's available to develop affordable housing. So once we get that data, then we will develop data-driven policy, and we will come up with a scorecard or ways to determine our successes based on that information.
I was just gonna add that I think that, we know the need is huge. There's a difference between the need for the affordable housing and what we have the ability to support and produce. And so no one is questioning or arguing the need for X amount of, homes and apartments to be built. The question is, what are the resources and the tools that we have available to begin to meet the need? So I think that's a little bit of the difference around, what the need is. Yes, there's huge need, but what we can actually support.
And just as a follow-up, can you speak to any new opportunities that you've identified as a result of the pandemic? And forgive me if that was a part of the earlier part of the conversation, but just wanted to know if there was something that you guys had looked at, just pandemic focus.
So we have received funding, CARES Act funding, and we're using that funding to.
Not from the state.
Not from the state. No, it is federal funding, CARES Act funding. We received 3 tranches of funding, somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 million, to respond to pandemic-related issues around housing. So we are putting that to use and continuing to put it to use. One of the things, eviction, legal assistance. We know that when folks have legal assistance, they tend to do better when they go to eviction, when they have eviction proceedings. So that's one of the things, rental assistance, even mortgage assistance. For some of those 80% of below AMI actual homeowners, even some of those that we have awarded down payment assistance, we want them to be successful, and we want to have opportunities to help them if they do run into issues. Our landlords, we want to provide assistance to them. That's what we're doing. Our homeless individuals, making sure they have the resources they need, even special needs populations such as those afflicted with AIDS or AIDS households. We have funding, additional funding, HOPWA funding that also came with CARES Act funding that we're using to provide assistance from you.
Absolutely, and also just to add, that's exactly what our strategy is when it comes to another stimulus package coming from the federal government. We are advocating very strongly that the money comes directly to the city of New Orleans. We've been burned already, and we know that the mechanisms are in place for the city to manage these dollars. They come by way of CDBG. We manage CDBG every day. So the mechanism is in place for the federal government to make good on that next stimulus coming directly to the city and not looking at the 500,000 threshold that has been on the table. And so we'll continue, to advocate. Another thing I would say, Marjorie touched upon and you talked about during COVID, has really been, what COVID has shown us, when we talk about our unsheltered people, was that if we really want to get it done, all levels now, that we could do it. And the majority of the resources, though, doesn't come from the city. We have a certain amount that we have that comes from HUD annually. But working really collaboratively, I would say, with LHC and the like at the state level, we've just pushed forward. And that's how we've gotten more of our folks into permanent housing. And that was our goal from day one when we moved aggressively to get our people off of the street. We still have some of our folks sheltering in the areas on the street. It continues to be a big challenge by getting them off, and we're working through that. We've also put more resources and moved very quickly for this to expand the low barrier shelter. That notice to proceed in terms of construction has already gone out, and so work is starting to go on there. That will add an additional 200 beds to the low barrier shelter. And so although this came during the pandemic, it has moved us forward, I really do believe, as it relates to our homeless population.
WDSU?
Okay, so post-Katrina, a lot of African Americans and minorities left and didn't come back. A lot, stated that they had issues with affordable housing. Now, in the midst of the pandemic, many might have the same issue. Tell us about what's being done to keep minorities in particular here in New Orleans.
Right, so many of, and really all of, but for the most part, I would say many of the programs that Marjoiana spoke to are focusing heavily on that population of people. Not just in regards to rental units, but also in home ownership. We know that we're still a city with majority of rental community. And there needs to be, and that's why it's a priority for us to push more of our folks into home ownership where they can afford and be successful once they get into that home. And that comes from down payment, also closing, but then how we have used our soft second program to really get them into these homes. But Marjoiana, anything else to add? I know you've rattled off your programs, but we can reiterate that.
No, I would just echo what the mayor said about the down payment assistance soft second program. That program's been rocking and rolling, and we are continuing to provide assistance to individuals and to help these people, not just New Orleans, but also keeping the talent in New Orleans that's here, the teachers, the new young professionals, young families that are here, and the ability to stay here and purchase a home and continue to have roots here. So we're working on that.
And our Cultural Bearers program, activating housing specifically for that population has been a priority. And well, I mentioned in the artist community, all those are tied to our Cultural Bearers. So those are just big priorities for us.
And this is a little off the subject, but NOFD Superintendent Tim McConnell
I'd
retiring.
like to
Well,
make
take
a
me
reference.
after that. You know,
Okay,
I
I
like
will.
This,
you should know me by now.
I do.
Okay, I'll take it. You know, we'll do that after.
Do we
Okay.
have any other housing related questions?
Yeah, let's see us buying a house.
Right.
It might be.
Well, Madam Mayor,
Retirement house.
if we're good, if you want, Marjan and Ellen, if they want to step aside and do some both-side questions.
Yeah, anything to add? I think we've covered a lot of ground, I know.
Yes, I would just say thank you again for the opportunity, Madam Mayor.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Tyra, since you're here. That's my house right over there.
And we can provide you a copy of the PowerPoint. There's a lot of
Yes.
data in there, especially with the stuff that's hard to read for the camera.
Yes.
So we'll get that to you. Thank you two very much. And Madam Mayor, what we'll do is Fox 8